I don't know how I got this privilege. Each of you is here because this man has touched you deeply in some way. And I'm going to try really hard not to get emotional. He's been a very, very personal, dear friend for me, for us, and it's just an honor to be standing here. I will tell you this. Marty had a huge hand in starting not only this church, but also a huge hand in moving things forward at the national level. And what I know about people and organizations is when you begin something, it's no holds barred. You do the work because you're all committed, very passionate. But then as you start to build, you want to make sure that you're not offending anybody and you become more cautious. And in this past year, this man has become very, very impassioned. He is on a mission. He's still going to change the world, even though he's got a different net. Without further ado, for a man who needs no introduction, Marty Shanahan.
I love you too. Now, I don't know why I get Kleenex, but I get Kleenex. I really do promise to try not to cry, at least not much tonight, at least not a whole bunch. Okay. What's that? Yeah, wait until you talk. Yeah, I understand that. Disclaimer, I am Irish, so my kidneys are connected to my eyes, so that's a very good possibility. Thank you for at least laughing. So please let me, first of all, say thank you. Thank you for every one of you who are here. Thank you for your presence, not only tonight, but thank you more than words can ever convey. As Cassie said, sometimes you just can't say it because it doesn't work, right? It doesn't hold everything that you want it to hold. But I am sincerely moved and deeply appreciative for your presence. Right, dude? So I'd like to begin tonight and I promise I'm not going to keep you for a half hour. I got a half-hour slot, and that's dangerous to give a person a microphone with a half an hour. But I won't take up a half an hour. But I would like to begin with just a small reflection from 38 years. I've been in ministry for 38 years. And I would like to summarize that experience like this. Listening to God's will, or listening to God's still small whisper, is a dangerous thing to one's life. Listening to God's still small whisper is a dangerous thing to one's life. That still small whisper will bring us face to face with numerous obstacles as well as untold joys. A number of years ago, I began to have a conversation with God on the subject of retirement. I don't mean to sound weird or be weird, but my relationship with God, as you could probably know, is pretty essential to my life. So having a conversation with God is a regular part of what I do. And I really knew that stepping into retirement was really going to be stepping into a new threshold, right? I'm going to be doing and exploring something in a new way. And when we came up with the theme for this gathering, we said it's casting a new net. I'm not taking my net out of the water. I'm just casting it in a new way, in a different way. And there's a favorite author of mine, John Donahue. John is a priest and a poet and an activist, and peace be upon him because he's already passed. But he said this in his book, The Space, to bless the space between us. He said this: to change is one of the greatest dreams of every heart, but change is difficult for us. So often we opt to continue our old pattern rather than risking the danger of difference. We are also often surprised by change that seems to arrive out of nowhere, and we find ourselves crossing some new threshold that we had never, ever anticipated. It seems to me, my friends, that every time I've had a deep and meaningful conversation with God, I've ended up with exactly what John said. I've ended up being surprised by change. And over the years, people have said to me many times, so Marty, you really have conversations with God? You know, like, that's a little bit weird. And I say, actually, yes, I do. I have a lot of conversations with God, and I owe those conversations to my very first spiritual director, Father Raymond Steinhauser. We call him Steiny. Steiny was my very first choice of a spiritual director. Steiny was a priest at my seminary, in my first year of seminary. He was primarily in a T-shirt and a pair of Dickies, like 95% of the time. The only time he wore a set of clerics was when he was in chapel, and that was like twice a day, right? Otherwise, he was in T-shirt and a pair of Dickies, Dickie work pants. And so 1979, I'm a first-year seminarian, and I choose him as my spiritual director, and I come in and I have my first session with him, and he says, so tell me about your spiritual life. And I go, Steiny, it's like awesome. I talk to God all the time, and I get these answers. You know, I get pretty convinced that I hear God's voice, and you know, it comes pretty clear about what I'm supposed to do. And he goes, that's really interesting. Which wasn't the response that I thought I was going to get from my first spiritual director. He said, can I say this to you? He said, I've spent 40 years in ministry. And he said, I've often heard and had, especially first-year seminarians, come in and tell me that they've had conversations with God or prayers with God, and God has answered those prayers. And my experience in these last 40 years has told me that usually those answers are the answers that that person actually came up with and then decided that God needed to answer that way. And to give my granddaughter credit, even though I didn't know her at that point, of course, because she wasn't born, I said, like, what? I'm like, Steiny, that can't be true. And he said, yeah, often, I'm sorry to say, but God's answers to those conversations are usually something that you've created rather than God. And I'm like, oh, no way. And he said, yeah, that's really I mean, like, what? I said, you know, out of all due respect, dude, I'm 18 years old. I know what's happening. I mean, I got out of my house early. Like they say, you're 18, you know what's supposed to happen. I got out of my house. I have life figured out, and I especially, Steiny, you know, with all due respect, I have God figured out because I understand the Baltimore Catechism. I nearly have it memorized. So I know how God acts, and what you're saying is not in the Baltimore Catechism. In fact, I said, I don't ever remember ever in the Baltimore Catechism it's saying we must pray and then sit and wait for listening to God's voice. And I have this thing memorized. It's not there, dude. And he said, well, I'll tell you what. If you really want to hear God's voice and you really want to hear God's answers, he said, you must be willing to sit long enough to hear the whisper. The whisper. And he said, so my encouragement for you, Marty, is keep having those conversations with God. Keep at it. Keep doing that, because having conversations with God and praying with God is like an awesome thing. And he said, just make sure that you make enough time to sit with God and let God talk back, right? So most of the time, he said, in my experience, I think God replies to most of our prayers or most of our desires. He said, not in complete sentences, but oftentimes mostly in a word. And I'm like, oh, dude, that again is not in the Baltimore Catechism. As my dear friend Cassie had turned me on to Richard Rohr say, Steiny kind of broke my table, right? And I had to, like, recreate this whole thing from beginning to end because it wasn't in the Baltimore Catechism, and I was 18 and I had it figured out. So that was the beginning of a new spiritual journey for me, and those conversations with Steiny have actually carried me forward all 38 years of ministry. A number of years after that very first conversation with Steiny, I was fishing with him. Surprising. I know some people said, I didn't know you liked to fish. I love to fish, okay? So we were fishing actually in the northern tip of Lake Huron. We're actually in this little bay back in the and we're not catching anything. And Steiny says to me, so, Marty, have you had any conversations with God lately and heard any things? And I said, I really have. It's a number of years later. So I said, I really have, but number one, I'm a little concerned that it may be my own voice and not God's voice, so because you kind of nailed me the very first time we got together, and I said I don't know, I don't know if it's really religious because it doesn't sound like it. And he said, I tell you what, why don't you just try me out? Just try me out. He said, you got nothing to lose, and I know you now, and you know me, and so he said, just let me have it. I said, okay. Steiny, I think I have heard God's answer and whisper in my life in a number of ways, and it always is the same thing. It always comes up with the same thing, no matter what the question is that I ask God, no matter what I pray about, it always seems to be the same answer. And he said, so what is it? And I said, what God has always said to me is surprise. I know, it's funny, right? Surprise. The funny thing is, Steiny, who's now 45 years ordained, right, gets the biggest smile on his face. And he looks at me and he says, you might just well have heard the first whisper of God. And I'm like, shit. He said, keep listening. And I said, really? And he said, yes, keep listening, because that probably is God's whisper for you. And I thought, really? Surprise? It had to be better than that. It had to be at least a little bit better than that. So I did what any good seminarian would do. I started searching sacred scripture, right? Go right back to sacred scripture and let's get this figured out. So I go to the very first book of sacred scripture. I open it up, chapter 1, Genesis chapter 1, verses 1 and 2. Guess what it says? In the beginning, when God created the heavens and the earth was a formless void, and darkness covered the face of the deep, and a wind from God swept over the face of the waters. And I was like, come on. What about the Big Bang? What about atoms? What about quarks? What about all that stuff that science is telling us about? And you're telling me that the world began with you breathing on these waters that nobody could see and nobody could hear and they weren't around. It doesn't make any sense. Like, come on, God, give me a little bit more to work with, right? Give me a little bit more to work with. And God said, surprise. And so I dug a little bit deeper, and it's like, Adam and Eve are right next. And you know what God said? Surprise, you're naked. And then Cain and Abel came after that, and they were like, surprise. That's not the way it's supposed to work. And then poor Noah, the dude was minding his own business out in the middle of the desert, build me an ark. Surprise. It's always surprise, over and over. Moses and prophet after prophet after prophet. Look at Isaiah, Jeremiah, poor Jonah. The dude had to spend a week in the belly of that stupid whale, right? It's constant surprise. It goes on and on. The list goes on and on. The disciples, all of them, fishermen. Oh, now I want you to fish for men. Like, really, dude? Come on, surprise. I really do believe Steiny was onto something, and I've really come to understand that it's dangerous to listen to God. It's dangerous. So at 19, after my first year of seminary, I'm being a little bit transparent. No, I'll be a little more than transparent. I'm 19 years old. Spent my first year in seminary. I came back home to work for the summer. I worked for an alfalfa plant. If you don't know in rural Nebraska what an alfalfa plant does, it takes alfalfa, it chops it up, and then it turns it into pellets to feed the animals, right? So 19 years old, and I get put onto a DC-9. If you don't know what a DC-9 Caterpillar is, let me tell you, it's 10 pounds short of 45 ton. 10 pounds short of 45 ton, has 494 horsepower. The tracks alone, each track weighs 2 ton apiece, right? Just the tracks. And I didn't know that God had another surprise in store because I thought I was doing really well in life, and I was actually a really active alcoholic. So I would come to work every day driving this 45-ton Caterpillar with 30 minutes of instruction. I had 30 minutes. It taught me how to do this with the roller, because it drives like a tank, right? So I had 30 minutes. I was an active alcoholic. I'd come to work with a Pepsi, a sandwich, and a pint of whiskey. And of course, like any good alcoholic, I misjudged one day. I misjudged my consumption and my ability to maintain my own contact with the world. And I had dumped, you got to understand, this Caterpillar holds 6 cubic yards of material. That's a hell of a lot of stuff. 6 cubic yards, I dumped the alfalfa in, and I decided to back up, and at the same time, I passed out. And when I'm backing up with 45 tons, I kept holding the handles and passed out, and managed to take off the end of the concrete structure, which was the offices for the alfalfa plant. It's 2 stories tall, 45 tons, doesn't care about concrete block. I literally ripped off the whole end of the building, 2 stories, whole end of the building, and when I came out of I was sitting there looking at my boss, who was on the 2nd floor in his office, sitting in his office chair at his desk. And guess what? I heard God's voice. Surprise. Yeah, surprise. And it was really clear, too. So I really wish that I would have been able to captivate the gift of sobriety in that treatment experience. I didn't end up getting that opportunity, but a number of years, in fact, a number of decades later, I was finally able to grab that gift that God gave to me in that surprise. Sometimes we don't pay attention to the surprise, right? So I got to tell you, I know you don't want to be here all night, so I'm going to just bring you. That's minor seminary. We're going to major seminary. I'm coming up here, right? I'm from Nebraska. I'm coming up to Minnesota, and I'm driving a 1971 Cadillac Sedan DeVille, and I'm pulling a U-Haul, and I have a really good seminarian friend. My seminarian friend is going to St. John Vianney Seminary, the minor seminary. I'm going to St. Paul Seminary, the major seminary, across the street. So we drive up. We're flying up here a little fast. I always drive fast. And I happen to have a rapid tire deflation. I blew out a tire. I blew out a tire just outside of Faribault. So into the rest area we go in Faribault. We change the tire. It's Saturday night. It's getting late. We finally make it into town. I think, okay, that's cool. I got him off, dropped him off at St. John Vianney. I go over to St. Paul Seminary. I pull in, I grab my bag, I find somebody to open the door for me, I find my room. I won't even go into all that. I went to sleep that night, and I got up. I had another conversation with God that night, and I decided that I couldn't wait for God's answer to this, but I was quite certain that God said, yeah, priesthood isn't your thing, so you should go home. So I took the only bag I had in the morning, and I went out, and Sunday morning, I went out to my car, put my bag in the car, shut the door, and I decided, well, I better walk around the car in the trailer because I still got the U-Haul connected. So I walk around the car, and lo and behold, I have a flat tire. Okay, I have no spare because I used the spare already, right? I blew out that one. This is a flat. It's Sunday morning. I'm in St. Paul, never been to this town, have no idea where to get my tire fixed, no way to get it off of the car because it's all buried in. What am I going to do? I'm really kind of like desperate, really pretty desperate. I had already decided that I was going to disappoint everybody in my life and have to go home and face the music. You know, I'm a failed seminarian, all the junk that goes with it. And I decided, well, to heck with it. I did learn that night before from the seminary schedule that there was going to be breakfast. So I thought, well, what the hell? I'll go have breakfast, right? I'll go eat breakfast. And so I walk into the refectory, which is another way of saying cafeteria, whatever. The seminarians always use a crazy language. I walk into the refectory, I grab my tray, and I'm down in the dumps. I'm depressed. I'm really bummed about everything, you know, and I'm bummed about what I'm about to do and how I'm going to disappoint everybody. And I slide my tray on the rails, and I look up. And I see the most amazing smile on the most amazing girl I had ever met. And I heard God whisper, "Surprise." Surprise. And then I said to God, really, dude, now I got to spend 5 years of my life fighting with you about, really, is this a surprise? Or is this not a surprise? Is this your voice or not your voice? I don't know. 5 years of back and forth about if this is what I was supposed to do or if God had other plans. And I really kept trying. And as many of you know, I ended up marrying the love of my life. So in June 17th of this past year, we celebrated 36 years of marital life, and 42 years of being together. That was one of the best surprises of my life, along with the 2 adorable daughters and 2 adorable grandson and granddaughter, and a wonderful son-in-law as well. Surprises, I bet, are not only just unique to my life. I bet they're the same in yours. I bet you all have had surprises like mine, and I bet they've led you to your own struggles and your own obstacles and your own blessings as well. Some of the most beautiful surprises that I have encountered in my life, my friends, some of the most beautiful surprises are you. Thank you. Thank you for being such amazing surprises in my life. And please allow me from the bottom of my heart to say that again and over. For being those surprises, I believe, is really God becoming incarnate in our world. I really believe that it's God becoming us, with us, in us, and through us. Thank you for this wonderful gathering. Thank you for the food, the fun, the refreshments, the music, the pure joy of being with one another and with you all. You absolutely are truly amazing. Given the fact that you are here is, I believe, a testament to the fact that God, the God in whom we believe, is not done with any of us. I quit believing long ago that we've come to know each other by pure fate. I believe somehow in this crazy, surprising world of God's wisdom and love, our souls and our lives were brought together to meet, to laugh, to cry, to celebrate, and to love one another. John Donahue, in that book again, To Bless the Space Between Us, said this: each life is a mystery that's never finally available to the mind's light or questions. That we are here is a huge affirmation, he said. Somehow life needed us and wanted us to be here. Some of you may be students of history, and some of you may know Booker T. Washington. I couldn't put all of Donahue's stuff on this, so Kathy and I got these for you. Because Booker T. Washington was born into slavery, and he ended up being one of the most fundamental change agents in the world, especially with regard to slavery. And he said, success is not measured by where you are in life, but by the obstacles that you've overcome. The greatest obstacle, my friends, which I still believe I battle, and I believe we all battle, is our own ego. When we finally reach the point in our lives that we can let go and let God, then the floodgates of love will open in our lives, and we will see every person in this world as a gift and every experience in our lives as an opportunity to love. So how do we measure success? There's so many ways. But Ralph Waldo Emerson, that American poet and essayist and lecturer and Unitarian minister, said this: to laugh often and much, to win the respect of intelligent persons and the affection of children, to earn the appreciation of honest critics and endure the betrayal of false friends, to appreciate beauty, to find the best in others, to leave the world a little bit better. Oh, shoot. Hold on one second. What's that? No. Okay, to leave the world a little bit better, whether by a healthy child or a garden patch or a redeemed social condition, to know even one life has breathed easier because you have lived, that is to have succeeded. To live a life that even when one has breathed easier because you have lived, that is to have succeeded. I do know, without a doubt and without hesitation and without question, that each and every one of you have already succeeded, because I can honestly say I have breathed easier because of you. So you are success, you are love, and you are God's face in this world, each and every one of you. So before I depart, I knew that there was no way that I could ever name, and as people know, I can't even pray prayers because I get it all mixed up in my ears. But I'm going to do this. If you're on the team that put this thing together today, would you stand? Or if you helped today put this thing together? Oh. I love each and every one of you, and I know there's people still in the kitchen that are doing their thing. So I can never repay all of you for everything that you've done and everything that you continue. You, my friends, have made and continue to make the past and the present and the future possible. You're living examples of God being and becoming incarnate in our world right here and right now. So let me end by saying this. Thank you, each and every one of you, for being such amazing surprises. I do want to acknowledge two people, though, in a special way, because three people actually are here tonight that originally founded this community 19 years ago. Joyce St. John is one. Tom King is another. And Lori Redding is another. 19 years ago, 12 people got together and said, yep, we can do this. We can create another way to be Catholic, and we did it. and I thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Okay, we're also gonna try and not cry, but no guarantees. Okay, hi everybody. My name is Kelly.
And I'm Megan.
Most of you have met us before, but for those who haven't, we are Marty's daughters.
All right, here it goes. We're not going to talk as long as Dad did. Thanks for that, by the way. All right. There are 1,000,001 things that we could say about our dad, but we're going to try to keep our speech short today, and hopefully we won't cry. Anyone who knows Marty knows that he's a man of many talents. Everything from being our car mechanic to playing guitar and singing loud on road trips to his ecclesiastical gifts.
My friends and I often refer to our dad's stories as the lore of Marty Shanahan. And believe us, his experiences are varied, some good, some harrowing. Everyone loves to hear about the time that he survived a plane crash, or about the one time that he took his dentures out at dinner and tossed them at one of our guests who is sitting in the back row today. But the piece that gets the biggest reaction for us is always, without fail, that our dad is a Catholic priest and bishop.
It does truly throw people off kilter, but it has been our norm for years, and I know I'm not alone in saying that I have a little 30-second elevator speech memorized on explaining the weirdness of it all.
Inevitably, when people find out that what our dad does for work, they want to know two things. Number one, how? And number two, how did it affect your upbringing? You all know the answer to the first one, but let's talk about how we respond to the second question.
My response always begins with telling people I grew up in the church.
And we mean that on a physical and a metaphorical sense. We've had birthday parties in church basements. We've prayed before every meal. We took piano lessons from the church choir director. And heck, even my godmom used to be a nun.
But it does go a bit deeper than that, too. Because of our dad's ministry, we learned many lessons in resilience and bravery.
Our dad's courage to leave the Roman Catholic Church after dedicating so much of his life in service taught us that if something means a lot to you, you might need to make some sacrifices to tear it up and rebuild your life in the way that you envision it.
Gosh darn it. Okay. Stop that. Sorry. Okay. Marty's bravery sought us to seek a new way to be Catholic, a way that aligned with his beliefs, taught us that we need to search for our own answers to problems and come up with solutions that work for us. Not everything in life is one size fits all.
Our dad's resilience to march forward instead of giving up in defeat when people he once thought of as friends attacked his character when he started Spirit of Hope taught us that sometimes you need to let shit and people go. When you put good out into the universe, you attract other good people. Resentment only serves to hurt you.
We are beyond grateful for these lessons that we've learned from our dad's ministry. He truly poured his life and soul into Spirit of Hope and planted many mustard seeds that have grown and more that have yet to sprout.
We believe the world has been an exponentially better place because Marty has been in it. So this is our big thank you, Dad, for always being a light for us in the darkness,
A lighthouse in the storm,
a pot of gold at the end of a rainbow,
and our North Star.
So congrats on your retirement. We love you, and we can't wait to hear about all of your new adventures that'll just serve to add to the Marty lore. And then also, Mom didn't make it into that little speech, but none of this would have been possible without her. So she gets a big extra round of applause for that, too.
Hi, everybody. Marty did mention that I've been honored to be a part of this amazing adventure since the beginning, and I couldn't be more thankful and humble and just, anyway. I also am representing our leadership team, the Circle of Servant Leaders, and I'll have a little bit more about Marty, but right now, there's someone else that needs a little bit of recognition. So our dearest Kathy. As your husband, Bishop Marty, enters retirement and a new chapter begins, we as a community want to pause and honor you. The quiet strength, the steady heart, and the faithful presence that has walked beside him every step of the way. Thank you for the many years that you have poured into this ministry, not only through your visible acts of service, but through the countless unseen ways you've nurtured, supported, prayed, and loved. You have shared your husband and your family with all of us. We can't be more grateful. And oftentimes, you placed the church ahead of your own needs. Your kindness, hospitality, wisdom, and warmth have touched more lives than you will ever know. You have been a true partner in this calling, offering encouragement when the days were long, and grace when the weight of ministry was heavy. Your love for family, your unwavering faith, your years of service through the vital efforts like hospitality, leading children's ministry for many years, have been a blessing for all of us. As this new season unfolds, and once your own retirement begins later this year, may it be one of deep rest, joyful adventure, and the sweet gift of more time with those you love. You have more than earned it. With heartful gratitude and abundant love, the Spirit of Hope Catholic Community. Okay, that's enough with the prepared stuff. Anyway, I really, words, I don't have many. Thanks seems very inadequate. I love you means a lot more. You brought that word with you tonight, surprise. And when I got that letter, it was a surprise. My wife, Marcia, encouraged me to go to that meeting. And I remember coming home that evening, and she said, well, what's going on? What's the news? And if none of you have known, I knew Marty in his previous life. I knew that he had left the Roman Catholic Church. He sequestered himself. Nobody knew where he was. And then he resurfaced. And I myself, I was at a real juncture with my faith and what was going on. And when I came home that night, I said to my wife, I go, Marty's going to start a new church. And she said, well, what are you going to do? I said, I'm going to be there with him. And just one thing I hope you'll always remember, and this crowded room is one thing that I've said to you over and over and over all those years. If you preach, they will come. And they have. So I just wish for you in retirement, busy days. No one ever told me. Everybody in my life, when I got ready to retire, they said, Saturday, every day is Saturday. Well, what I'm telling you right now is that's true. But Saturday is the busiest day of the week. And that is my wish for you, that your days are filled with joy, with busyness, with relaxation, and just enjoy it. You've gotten to this point. God bless you. And from the bottom of my heart, thank you, thank you, thank you so much. Thank you both.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ingrid Matson, part-time parish administrator and longtime member of the church, too. And I have to tell a story that was a real surprise to Marty. So hopefully you'll enjoy this. When I first met Marty, it was at St. Peter's. I sat on this side of the room, he sat on the other side of the room, and I swear he had a light around him. So I didn't even know then that you were going to be our deacon. This is a holy man. But not that holy for what I'm going to say. So we've done enough crying. I can't cry anymore. We gotta start laughing. I sit back there and I take care of the sacristan stuff now because I'm part-time parish administrator. And Kathy, sweet Kathy, takes care of the hospitality. So all the food she puts out, and she'll put out the bread for the Eucharist. Well, one morning it comes from the freezer, right? We have this naan bread that we take out early on, and it's perfect by the time communion comes. Well, I'm sitting in the back row, and he's halfway through his homily, and I just turn around, and there's no bread. And I'm freaking out, because I know it's going to be in the freezer. So I go running to the freezer. We have 3 lit candles on the back table. I come back to the thing. I have it in the glass bowl, and I'm holding it over the flames, trying to get it to heat up a little bit. And it's not working fast enough, and he's still talking. So I go, I got time to run to the microwave. So I go to the microwave, and I think, I hope it's not a sin that I'm microwaving the holy bread. But anyway, I had to get this done quickly. So I come running back just in time for the presentation of the gifts. It's back there. I sit down. I go, oh, great. So now the presentation of the gifts, they come up here. And Holy Bishop Marty Shanahan starts to do it, and he starts to talk about the bread, and he puts his hands on the bread, and it's warm, and he goes, it's happening in himself. That it's happening, the transubstantiation or whatever the heck it is. It's happening. And it wasn't, it was just microwave, but he couldn't figure it out because he didn't know I had done that. So, surprise!
And I have to tell you, that was really true, because I elevated that bread, and it was like, I had no idea what the heck was happening, but I wasn't ready for another surprise. Do I need to wait for anybody else? Are we good? Can I do want to say one thing. Can I have my 3 sisters and my niece stand? 2? Oh, come on, Dicker, stand up. This is my family, and they came up from Nebraska to be with us, so I just want to say thanks. And I will tell you, one of the conversations that started this whole thing was a conversation I had with Joyce. I won't tell you the conversation, but when I looked at her that day, it was an intense conversation, and I said, hang on, I think there's another way to be Catholic. And she looked at me and said, really? And I said, yeah. She said, I'll wait. And then she was the first one. Thank you. So, any other comments, questions, thoughts, wishes, or desires? I love each and every one of you. I appreciate it dearly. I can never say what my heart is experiencing at this moment, but know that I love you beyond words. Amen?